Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back. I was gone last week, but I'm back now, and I'm happy to be here, as always, alongside Deric Rush. I'm Jack Taylor. This week we have a very special guest, Mr. Todd Ellis. Played all 4 years as a quarterback at South Carolina, went to the draft in 1990, I believe, by the Denver Broncos, and now he's back in Columbia, the voice of the Gamecocks, and also runs a very successful law firm here in Columbia. So, Todd, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, it's great to be with you guys. Always good to be back on campus.
And it always is good to be back on campus. Is it ever surreal to be on campus, to walk through the horseshoe, walk, down Green Street?
It is. It doesn't get old to me. It's still the energy. Often on Fridays during the season, I'll come and run after I cut something with Coach Muschamp. I'll come run the horseshoe.
Really?
Just as a way of getting the energy back up and being ready for game days on the weekend. I love it. I call it one of my first loves. That'll never really change the university at all.
And so you're there at the stadium on game days, calling the plays. Does that the intro, the first 10 minutes, does that ever get old? Does the feeling ever go away there?
No, not at all. Listen, just like everybody else in 2001 gets roaring up, the hair on the back of my neck stands up. I don't know how many games I've done it now. It's my 16th year of calling play-by-play and longer than that overall with the broadcast team. But it's not. It is, you guys know, you do some broadcasting yourself. It's tough preparing for it, long time preparing, and then intense moments for a period of time. It's tough sometimes. It's late nights the night before and during the week. But once I get there, I mean, it's just like, it's very close to playing days. It really is in a lot of ways.
Speaking of playing days, as Jack said, you played for the Denver Broncos. I believe you played for the Sacramento Surge.
Look at you
briefly.
pulling that out of nowhere.
I want to talk about how do you feel that football has changed since you've been playing, like just the scope of football in general?
There's no question. The first thing I would go to is, they realized really about 12, 15 years ago, we might want to take the best athletes and put them on the defensive end spots and the defensive line. They realized you could cause chaos with the rule changes if you could rush the passer. And back when I was playing, it was much more situational defenses. They had guys who were run stoppers, and they had some third down specialty guys that came in and played. Well, now everybody can rush. Right. And come off and make the play on the run. That's what's changed the game completely. That and the money they're paying college coaches now allows them to bring some of the best ideas from the NFL down. Now you see it's actually trickling back the other way. The coaches that came to the college football are starting to give ideas to the guys in pro football. But the change you're talking about is they ran basically 3 coverages when I was playing. Now they run the zone blitzes, and they run all the exotics that are on defense a lot tougher in that regard. But those are the 2 main things I see since I was playing.
I think to your point with the money, you kind of see that with Nick Saban, Chip Kelly's, and different coaches like that have just been able to enhance offensive strategies and defensive strategies. And like you said, there's the zones that they run nowadays are I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. Watching those old NFL films present.
I know. When they started having nose guards make interceptions, I was like, timeout. He's dropping in coverage. And how are you supposed to read that as a quarterback? So I think the fact that they've got these experienced NFL guys that have trickled down into these bigger jobs, particularly in the Southeastern Conference, huge advantage for defenses now, and that's why they keep tweaking the rules to help the offense in a lot of ways, is because the athletes are so good on defense, they can do so many things.
And he mentioned, your time with the Broncos and your time with the Surge. Talk a little bit about your career with the Broncos. Obviously, coming out of college, you were doing pretty well for yourself, getting drafted by the Broncos. What kind of transpired in Denver that brought you to where you are now?
Yeah, well, I played 42 games in South Carolina without getting hurt, and got hurt the 6th game of my senior season where I tore my MCL. So I don't know where I was ranked, but I certainly was in the top 5 quarterbacks coming out of the draft that year at that time. There was some good players, but I certainly was confident in that. I almost went out the year before. Some people had tried to talk me into going out to do that, and I came back for my senior season. So I was drafted very late with the Broncos, but I had a good situation because it was Kubiak and Elway, a couple good players, but they were 11-year veterans. So at that time, they had a 3-man rule. You could keep 3 men on the roster. They put it in that year at the quarterback position without impacting the rest of the roster. They never had that rule before. So I think I'm going in there. If I win the job as a 3rd guy, I can stay in and maybe slide in after one of those guys retired. Well, they take the 3rd-man rule away. And then the worst thing that happened was the quarterback meeting probably changed my life in a lot of ways. We drew straws as to which game we would play in the preseason. And I got the Niners. And Broncos had lost to the Niners in the playoffs the year before, and Dan Reeves was the most competitive guy I've ever seen in my life. I said, I may not get in, much less play. Sure enough, it's 7-7. I think it's second quarter, maybe it's into the third quarter at that time, or we were up 14-7. And they come and get me, and Reeves looks at me and he's like, just don't let this go. Be safe. Runs me out there. Long story short, first down, we run some play, either gain to yard right side. It's Monday Night Football, by the way. Yeah,
wow.
So it's against
Prime
the
time.
Niners, prime time.
Oh, no.
Monday Night Football. Second down is probably the play of my life in a lot of ways. I'm telling the story like I stay up at night, can't think of nothing else, but it was impactful at the time. Little tight end drag to the outside, drop back. I'd run it 100 times in camp, was ready, and I just gunned it probably a little too early. And he turns and it just trickles off his hand. He was open. And so I probably threw it too hard, too fast. And then third down, guy breaks through and sacks me. We punt it, guy runs the ball back, ties it up at 14.
Oh, no.
Reeves takes me out, puts
Yikes.
Kubiak back in the ball game. So that's the timing in life, and this is a long answer to your question in my career in Denver. So a couple weeks later, I end up they lose the 3-man rule. I get cut. Kubiak and Elway go on to win a couple more Super Bowls. And then I signed with the Surge in that time. So my pro career was very limited, but what I saw was, not specific to me, is the talent level is so small differences between the guys that are drafted in the first, second round, or even the veterans. And the difference is, have you gotten a slot that you've been able to prove yourself so that they got to keep you on the team? Or have they paid you enough money to where they can't lose that investment early on to let you go up and grow and do that? And once you're a 7th round draft choice, they don't have that much money in you. It's easier to let you go during that time frame. But it was a great experience. Elway, I knew his dad recruited me at Stanford, and so I knew that crowd during that time frame. And Sacramento was great for the short stint that was there, but quickly turned to maybe I ought to go to law school and start that process.
And obviously, you're doing very well for yourself with your law firm here. Switching over to your job now, your career now with announcing, how do you feel that the scope of college sports has changed? Maybe not specifically to football, just college sports in general. Since you've been an announcer, what's your opinion on how the NCAA and college sport in general has changed?
Well, I'm a big proponent of player rights in a lot of ways. I think it's going to be interesting where it's going in the future and what rights they have and benefits that they get. There's obviously every year talk. I bet you guys have had a show about it. Should we expand the playoffs? Mm-hmm. And if they start to do that, do kids get more benefits? Why would they play again if I'm not getting more benefits and I'm getting a risk of being hurt? So I'm generally a proponent of player rights, and I don't think we've gone too far. I think one of the best things we did was give them the stipend over a period of time based on the cost of true attendance at South Carolina. And I know a lot of people don't feel that way. I'm always surprised, even people y'all's age, when I talk to them about, hey, should we pay Marcus Lattimore to go play football at South Carolina because they sell his jersey and they use him in advertising to sell. And a lot of people say no, he gets the benefit of it. He's getting his college degree, he's famous and all this stuff. And I was like, well, if you were a top engineer at South Carolina and you had created some device while you're in a classroom, should they pay you for that? Do they get those rights altogether? So I would say that the overall value of college athletics now and the popularity of it, which of course then drives money, drives some interesting issues where we're going, where we are right now.
And I feel like it's interesting that you bring up the commercial aspect, and that you kind of segued into one of my next questions. Do you feel that players should be compensated more for their efforts on the field or field of play wherever they are?
I don't have a perfect plan, but I think I like the fact that there might be some trust set up related to marketing and progress with regard to your degree. So as long as you're making progress towards your degree, and if you're utilizing the marketing aspect of it, either by licensing your image to EA Sports or selling your jersey on campus, or the jersey you wear because your number based on that, or using them in advertising, take the guys and gals and give them a stipend further. As long as they're making progress towards their degree, they get that trust fund once they're done. Do I think that we ought to say, make it a free open market and us take Texas? If there's another Todd Ellis or Marcus Lattimore out there, can they bid for his rights basically to pay him, or to say, listen, I'll get you 2 car dealerships that want you to come sign autographs, as opposed to South Carolina, who doesn't have the marketplace for that over that period. No, I don't want that. So I think amateurism is a little bit of a joke. We all know that based on the amount of money that's there. But I'm not for blowing it up to have a free open market to pay players and to do it. And there's another little thing called Title IX that's pretty important. You know, if you play the volleyball gal the same price, you got to pay her what the football player is getting as well, based on Title IX. I think there'd be some lawsuits that came up based on that. So it's intriguing times. It really is.
But at the very least, they should be getting more than McDonald's when they go to visit the president after they win a championship.
I like where your head is. Yeah, maybe no Big Macs for that, but they handled it pretty well. Don't get me started.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this segment, but stick around as we got some more coming up. And until next time, South Carolina, Spurs up.